Welcome back to the Morning Ledger. I'm Ari, your host, and today we're diving into one of the biggest questions shaping business today. How far should large corporations go when it comes to sustainability, and what really drives the choices they make? We've brought together 4 guests who represent very different perspectives on this issue, and we're going to unpack these viewpoints from multiple angles. There's a lot to get into today, so let's jump straight into our introductions.
I'm Shivani, the CEO of Excellent Energy, one of the largest oil producing companies in the world.
And my name is Kaden Nishimura, and I am the current CFO of Exxon Energies.
Hi, I'm Hannah, CEO of Green Space Energy, where we're creating the future of sustainable energy.
And I'm Vishnur. I'm the CFO of Green Space Energy.
Alright, now let's get into the first question. What do you think about the challenges big companies face when they're asked to expand sustainability programs, especially when those programs require major investments or shifts in how the business operates?
At Excellent Energy, we want to be sustainable, but the reality is these massive initiatives are really challenging. Friedman was right. Managers are accountable to shareholders, so spending heavily on programs that don't generate returns violates our financial duty. And Adam Smith's invisible hand shows that markets work best when firms act in their own interest. Sustainability matters, but forcing large corporations to increase sustainability initiatives is unrealistic due to increased costs that could create a lack of resources and also conflict with profit motives of many companies.
Yeah, so building off this point, the financial structure of modern corporations makes these large-scale sustainability demands even more difficult to actually carry out in practice. McKinsey estimates global net zero would need over $9 trillion annually, far beyond what most companies can afford without cutting core operations. Plus, 92% of investors in a 2024 EY survey won't trade short-term earnings for long-term sustainability.
Corporations like ours and Excellent Energy control large supply chains, global logistics, and resources. We can't justify just sitting around waiting for change to be more convenient, as companies that adopt renewable energies are the ones that save long-term and reduce regulatory risk. But on social responsibility, the businessman states that all businesses have a duty to pursue policies for the sake of society. While our large initiatives require investment in sustainability improves brand image, lessens costs over time, and is necessary for the future of our planet.
And remember Cialdini's principles: social proof, authority, and liking. Corporations use these all of the time to persuade billions of people. So if they're already influencing people at that level, shouldn't they use the power of sustainability to influence more people rather than make more profits?
Oh, those are both interesting points, but I think it's time to move on to the second question. What do you think about the idea that large companies have a unique level of influence on the market and the public? And should that translate into a greater expectation for them to lead on sustainability efforts?
Large companies absolutely should have greater expectations to lead change, as they have the greatest means to do so. Corporate activities don't just affect shareholders, but the community, workers, consumers, and environment. When Walmart adopted their sustainability index, thousands of smaller companies adjusted their practices in its image. Apple's renewable energy commitments resulted in suppliers in Asia switching to greener sources. The size and visibility of these major corporations means they don't just respond to the markets, but have the power to shape them, and the CSR pyramid reinforces that these firms hold ethical and philanthropic responsibility to be leaders for the sake of societal benefit.
Corporations produce the most harm, but they also have the ability to create solutions. Sustainability is not a charity project. It aligns with modern definitions of corporate value, stakeholder responsibility, and even long-term profitability. So yes, corporations should lead sustainability, not because they're some saints, but because they're the only ones big enough to actually make change.
We hear the point about larger corporations being able to influence smaller businesses, but having a big footprint doesn't mean we should become the moral leader of the market. Large companies like Exxon Energy influence behavior because we meet consumer demands, not because we set societal rules.
Yeah, and we can inspire change when sustainability aligns with innovation and profitability. But expecting big companies to carry that responsibility alone sets an unrealistic standard and that smaller firms could never really follow.
Now that we've heard both sides, Is there a realistic middle ground where these corporations can balance profitability with meaningful sustainability efforts?
There's certainly a middle ground between sustainability and profit. While it's often inferred that striving for sustainable business practices will sacrifice profit, it should be seen as an investment. Porter and Kramer's shared value model illustrates how sustainability can increase competitiveness by reducing waste, boosting efficiency, and improving brand strength. Corporations who invest in sustainability will develop cheaper, more efficient energy systems, strengthen brand loyalty, and separate themselves from competitors as change makers, which look out for their community, ultimately integrating change, profit strategy, and long-term success.
Corporations can balance profit and sustainability when efforts improve efficiency or reduce long-term risk, like energy savings or waste reduction. Those align with the profit motive, so they work. But expecting companies to equally prioritize both all the time is unrealistic. Friedman's point is clear. Profit is the core objective. A true middle ground only exists when sustainability fits into competitive strategy and when it overrides it.
This data also supports this. In a 2025 Morgan Stanley survey, it found that while 88% of these companies see sustainability as value creating, the high upfront costs are still the main barrier. Similarly, in a 2025 Kearney survey of 500 CFOs, it showed that 69% of them expect returns from sustainability only when it improves efficiency and also lowers the long-term risk.
Now, let's take a look at a real-world example. What do you think about Amazon's pledge to reach net zero carbon by 2040, even as their emissions have continued to rise? Does this show that sustainability goals are impractical for massive companies focused on growth?
Amazon's rising emissions shows that sustainability is complicated in massive firms when you put it in the backseat to prioritize growth. Large companies like Microsoft, IKEA, and Unilever have all reached very extreme sustainability targets by establishing green systems early and setting measurable benchmarks. Becoming a sustainable firm takes planning from the early stages and shouldn't be implemented as an afterthought while prioritizing growth.
Amazon alone controls half of e-commerce. If they literally change their sourcing and packaging, it changes the entire supply chain overnight. So yes, they absolutely should be leading this. They're not small startups, these are billion-dollar machines.
Amazon's goal to reach net zero carbon by 2040 does sound ambitious, but it's clear that massive sustainability pledges are often unrealistic for companies which are built on rapid growth. While Amazon has promised to decrease their emissions, according to Reveal News, reports show that not only are their emissions rising, they're also undercounting their carbon footprint. It's not surprising that their emissions may be increasing as the scale of the company increases, but pushing these sustainability initiatives, which has even resulted in greenwashing, is unrealistic.
From a Friedman's perspective, Amazon's priority is meeting demand and maximizing shareholder value. According to Bloomberg, Amazon's carbon emission rose by 6% in 2025 and climbed to more than 33% since the baseline year of 2019, where they pledged to reach a net zero by 2040, climbing to 68.25 million metric tons of CO2 equivalents. They can't suddenly slow down expansion or change their entire logistic networks to reach zero emissions without hurting competitiveness.
Thank you all for sharing your insights today. Unfortunately, we are out of time and we do have to wrap up this discussion. What's clear is that sustainability inside major corporations is a negotiation between financial responsibility and social responsibility. A realistic path forward may lie in a hybrid approach. Companies should be expected to lead on sustainability in areas where it naturally strengthens efficiency, innovation, and long-term competitiveness, while governments and markets share the burden of the cost-heavy transitions. That could mean clearer regulatory standards so corporations aren't acting alone, investor incentives for long-term sustainability returns, and phased sustainability goals that match a company's capacity rather than forcing unrealistic, immediate overhauls. In this middle ground, large firms still use their influence to move industries forward, like setting cleaner supply chain expectations or investing in greener technologies. But they do so in a way that aligns with economic realities and protects shareholder obligations. It's not about choosing between profit or the planet, but designing systems where both can reinforce each other over time. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Morning Ledger.